Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to dive into a framework that is absolutely changing the game for anyone building with AI. It's called LangChain. So if you've ever looked at a powerful language model and thought, okay, cool, but how do I make a real app with this? Well, you're in the right place. Let's get into it.
Right? We all know that large language models, or LLMs, are just incredible. They can write poetry, summarize dense articles, and hold a pretty convincing conversation. But for a developer, that's just the starting point. The real question is, how do you go beyond a simple chatbot? How do you get an LLM to actually use your company's private documents, or pull live data from the internet, or even just remember what you talked about yesterday? It's a surprisingly tricky puzzle. So, in this explainer, we're going to tackle that puzzle head on. We'll start by really defining the problem. Then we'll introduce LangChain as the solution. We'll explore its most powerful features, walk through how you'd actually build an AI agent, and then zoom out to see what this means for the future of, well, everything. You see, the real challenge here is all about connection. An LLM by itself is kind of like a brilliant brain floating in a jar. It has this amazing capacity for reasoning, but it has no eyes, no hands, and no access to the outside world beyond the data it was trained on. So developers need a way to connect that brain to their own data, to other tools, and to specific multi-step workflows to create something that's genuinely useful. And that is exactly where LangChain comes in. It is the elegant, powerful answer to this puzzle. You should really think of it as the ultimate toolkit for AI development. It gives you all the essential building blocks you need to construct these really sophisticated, powerful AI applications. So what is it officially? LangChain is an open source framework designed specifically for this job. But honestly, the best way to think about it is like Lego blocks for LLMs. It gives you all these standardized, reliable pieces that you can just snap together to build almost anything you can dream up. And this image here just illustrates that idea perfectly. You see, LangChain provides these components, things like prompts, models, memory, and tools. And then it acts as the glue, the connective tissue that lets you chain them all together into a logical, complex workflow that actually gets something done. Okay, so let's get into the specifics. What are these Lego blocks exactly? Instead of just giving you a long, boring list, we're going to focus on a few of the most impactful features, the ones that really give developers superpowers. First up, and hey, it's right there in the name, chains. This is the fundamental concept. It lets you create a logical sequence, kind of like an assembly line for your AI. So a user asks the question, step 1 finds the right data, step 2 summarizes that data, step 3 formats the answer beautifully. It's all about creating a defined, repeatable process. Next is something called RAG, which stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. And trust me, this is a huge deal. RAG lets your AI answer questions using a specific private knowledge base, like, say, all of your company's internal documents. It works by loading your docs, turning them into a searchable format, and then retrieving only the most relevant snippets to answer a question. This is what grounds the AI in reality, making its answers way more accurate and useful. Now, this is where the real magic happens. Agent frameworks. They take everything a step further. You see, instead of just following a predefined chain of steps, an agent can actually reason. It can look at your request, decide for itself which tool it needs. Maybe it needs to search the web, or query a database, or use a calculator, and then it uses that tool to accomplish the goal. It's about giving the AI autonomy to think and act. And if you're building a real-world application, this feature is an absolute must-have. LangSmith is LangChain's observability platform. Observability is a fancy word, but it just means you can see exactly what your agent is thinking at every single step. You can trace its decisions, figure out what went wrong, and monitor its performance over time. This is absolutely critical for any serious production-level app. Okay, we've talked about a lot of concepts, so let's try to make this a little more concrete. We're going to do a quick high-level walkthrough of how you'd actually use these features to build a real AI agent, inspired by the code from our source material. So first, you load your knowledge. Let's say it's customer data from a CSV file. You use something called document loaders for that. Second, you create a retriever that indexes all that data so the AI can search through it really, really fast. Third, you give the agent a special skill, a custom tool, like a function that can predict customer churn. And finally, you combine the language model, your retriever, and your new tool into what's called an agent executor. That's the engine that actually runs the agent, letting it use all its tools to answer questions. And just like that, you have an agent that can not only answer questions about your data, but also predict the future. Pretty cool, right? So let's zoom back out. Building that one agent is awesome, but what are the broader implications here? Why does all of this matter so much?
Well, the source material gives this fantastic piece of advice for anyone looking to get started. Start simple, iterate to agents. In other words, begin by building a straightforward chain, see how it works, then gradually give it more tools and more autonomy until it becomes a fully fledged agent. It's a really practical roadmap for development. And when you're ready to go live, this isn't just a checklist, it's your playbook for success. You've got to version your prompts just like code. You need to A/B test different approaches using Langsmith, and you absolutely must sanitize inputs to protect against security risks. This is the stuff that separates a cool demo from a robust, secure, production-ready application. So here's the bottom line. LangChain isn't just another programming library. It is a foundational tool that's empowering a whole new generation of software. We're moving away from AI that just responds to AI that can actually reason, plan, and take action. We're building what's called agentic AI. And what that really means is we're shifting from programming what our software does to programming how it thinks. Which brings us to our final thought here. For decades, software has just followed our instructions. It's been incredibly powerful, but it couldn't think for itself. Now, with frameworks like LangChain, we're giving our software the ability to reason and act on its own. So the real question, the one I want to leave you with, is this: what will we build next?